This is Mr. Vargas, and this is part one of my clicking game tutorial. At the end of this video, you will have a game that looks very similar to what you see on the screen. So you basically have a level, just one level, and it has a wall. It has four walls, basically made up of blocks. And then you have a ball that's bouncing around the room. And when you click on the ball, it jumps to a different part of the room, and my volume is muted right now, but you'll see when I unmute my computer that it makes a sound when it bounces along the wall, and it also makes a sound when you click on it. So I'm gonna unmute now, and then you can see it makes a sound, and then you can click on it as well, and it makes a clicking sound. So I'll mute that again. And so this is part one. In part two, you're gonna add a score, and you're gonna also increase the difficulty by making the ball get faster every time you click on it. So let's get started. We're gonna go to My Games. We're gonna hit New Game, and then you just gotta wait like a couple seconds for this interface over here to load up. And we're gonna start with an empty project. Hit OK. Let's change some settings before we start creating objects. So for the game, let's give it a name. So I want you to name it Clicking Game, and then your initials. We're going to turn off gravity because this game, the ball, you don't want the ball to just fall straight down. And let's increase it a little bit just to give us a little bit more working room, make the level a little bit bigger. Press OK. And now I want to change the background. So right now it's just plain white. So to change the background, you can go to game levels, and this game is only going to consist of one level. And over here, you can set the color of the background. You can also load backgrounds, but for now, we'll just set a solid color. So to set the color, you just pick a color on this wheel. So I'm going to pick a blue, and then you get to pick how dark of a shade you want. Do you want like a very saturated blue, or do you want a dark blue or a light blue? I'll pick something maybe like over here, and actually I'll make it a little lighter, and then press OK. Press OK. And now we can start creating the game objects. So we're gonna start off by making the wall object. And to create an object, you just click anywhere in the screen. Since I'm making the wall objects line the edges, I'll just start there. So I'm gonna click right here. I'm gonna hit create, and we're going to give our wall object, we're gonna name it. So let's just call it wall block, and let's change the image. So I'm gonna click edit sprite, and this actually works fine for a wall, but I want you to get some practice like working with the graphics tools, even though they're pretty simple. So I want to delete this. So you can use the pencil tool or the eraser tool to just delete it like this. You can change the size of the grids, and that makes the deleting part a lot easier because now there's not that many blocks. So then we're gonna use the paint bucket tool, and now you can make any block you want. Don't do exactly what I'm doing. Experiment with it. Think about what will look good. But I'm gonna do like bricks. So I'm going to pick a red color. Press OK. And then you're gonna fill that in. And then I am going to use the pencil tool, and I'm going to use that to kind of draw the grout lines. So let's pick a white color. If you know RGB values, you can just enter the RGB values here. So I know white is just all Fs, and black is all zeros. So I'm going to use this white color to draw some lines. And let's draw the lines for our grout, for our bricks. And again, you could do anything you want. You could just do a solid color. You could put your initials in here. You could put some of happy face. You could have a bunch of blocks with happy faces. It's up to you what you want to do. All right, so we have our bricks, and when you're done, you can press OK. And we're done with that. Let's hit OK again. Now I want to copy this. I want lots of copies to go along the edge. So I'm going to click on the block and I'm going to hit clone. And then we can just drag the mouse or the trackpad all the way around. And we have our wall. If you made any by mistake, well, first of all, you should click done cloning when you're done. But if you made any by mistake, you can select them and hit delete, like if you went out of the lines. So we have our wall object. Now it is time to make our ball object. So to create our ball object, you just click anywhere in the middle of the screen, hit create, and we're gonna name, you can name it what you want. If you're using like a basketball, you can call it basketball. If you're making a happy face, you can call it happy face. I'm gonna just call mine's ball. And we're gonna go to physics, and we're going to set it to movable because you want it to move around the room. We're gonna increase the bounce to 100 so it bounces off the wall, and we're gonna decrease the friction so it has no friction, so it doesn't slow down when it hits the wall. So we'll press, let's go back to properties, and let's actually create our sprite. So I'm gonna just increase the grid size to make this easier to delete. And then I'll decrease the grid size so I can have some more finer tuned drawing. And I'm just gonna do a simple happy face for this. So I'm gonna put all zeros in here to just select black. But again, you can just click and select a color that you want. Oops, sorry. And so I'll press OK. Now I'm gonna draw my happy face. Again, this is gonna look kind of rough. I'm not gonna take my time because I'm sure you don't really want to just sit there and watch me do pixel art. Sorry, I keep doing that. All right, so we have our face. Now I'm gonna fill the inside with a shade of yellow. Press OK. Use the paint bucket tool. Then let's go back to black to draw the details of the happy face. Notice how when you use colors, they appear down here in this little bar, so that's handy to kind of keep consistency in your project. So do a happy face. Maybe I'll increase the grid size a little bit for the nose. Actually, I'll do something like that. Kind of a big nose, but that's okay. All right, so again, take your time with this, explore the tools, but I'm gonna keep it like this for my project. So we can press OK, and we have we have a ball object. Now it's time to make it move. So now we're gonna get into kind of the coding of FlowLab. So to code in FlowLab, you're going to hit edit, and you're gonna click on behaviors. So that's where all the coding is done. And FlowLab uses kind of like a flowchart type coding system. And I say coding, but there's not really coding involved. It's, there is logic, but it's all blocks. So let's see. Our first thing we're going to do is we want it to start moving right away, right? Right when the game starts, it should be moving on its own. So we're going to use a trigger. So these are triggers. Some game engines call these events, right? When code usually doesn't just run on its own, some event needs to trigger it. So we're going to use a once event. So a once event occurs one time at the beginning of the project, and we're going to use it to just get our ball moving. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the velocity of the ball at the beginning of the program. So when the program starts, let's set the velocity. Now velocity is a number, so we're going to drag a number block, and that was in the logics and math category. So as you can see here, there's different categories. You might want to take some time to kind of just check all of these out. Whenever you drag a block in the world, you can click on it, and usually there's some properties you can change, but what you can also do is you can click over here, what's this? And it takes you into the documentation for FlowLab, and you can see here the number block, it's description and then information about some of the properties and some tips. So especially because you're new, I recommend every time you use a new block to click on what's this, and then go read about it. So for the label over here, we'll just call this initial speed, and we're gonna set the initial speed to 3. And you can tinker around with this. It doesn't have to be 3. That seemed like it worked fine for me. And so at the beginning of the program, this is gonna trigger. A little signal is gonna come out of here, and we're going to connect this to over here where it says in. So it's gonna say this signal is gonna activate this block, and then we want that 3 to get sent to the velocity of our character. So let's add a velocity block. So velocity is under properties right here. So you have a velocity block, and same thing again. You might want to click on here, do what's this, and go read about it. But we're just gonna use it. So what's gonna come out of here is the number 3. So the game triggers. This 3 comes out of here, and it gets sent to the velocity, to the x and the y velocity of our ball. So at this point, we can test our game. So to test your game, you can hit play. We're down here, and it runs, and you can see your code here while it's running. So this works fine for this. Sometimes when your game has lots of code, this won't work as well. If that's the case, you can just hit done. Let me see. Okay. And then you can test it over here, and then it loads up in the regular window. Now, right now, our game doesn't do much. Let's go back to edit game. So there's not really any user interaction yet. So let's do that next. So now we're gonna make the ball clickable. So I'm gonna go back to edit, go back to behaviors, and we'll open up this window again. And we are gonna make our ball react to mouse clicks. So mouse clicks are under triggers, and we'll add a mouse click object. And again, you can click on it. You can see how you can change if it reacts to left clicks, right clicks, and you can even set it so that you can click anywhere for this object to register. But the defaults are fine for us. So when the mouse is clicked, we want it to jump. Well, when the mouse clicks on the ball object, we want it to jump to a random location inside of the room. So we're gonna go to logic and math for this, and we're gonna use 2 random blocks. The reason we're gonna use 2 is because location is usually measured with 2 coordinates, x and y. So each of these will generate a random x and a random y, right? Well, they're generating the random numbers, but we're gonna use them as our x and y in a second. So let's click on over here. We're gonna set the min value. Now the default is 0. I don't want 0 because I don't want the ball to appear like inside of the wall. So I want some buffer. I also don't want it to like appear like right next to a wall and it just bounces off immediately. So I'm just gonna go with like 3 and 8. Now remember, we're using the grid coordinate system, and this had 12 grids. It was 12 by 12, and it starts counting at 0. So this is 0 and this is 11. So this gives us, a little bit of buffer on both sides. So we'll press OK for that block, and then we're gonna go to the second block, and we're gonna also do this one 3 and 8. And we're gonna press OK. So this will generate 2 random numbers, and we want it to do that when you click down. So when you hit down, it's gonna make a new random number. And what are we gonna do with these 2 numbers? We're gonna change the position of the ball. So we're gonna go to properties, position, and we're going to connect this one to X and connect this one to Y. All right, let's test our game. And you see how right now it's a little bit harder to test because oh, you know what? This is good. I ran into an error. My ball disappeared, right? The reason the ball disappeared is because position should have been changed to use grid. So I'm going to put use grid, and we're gonna press OK, and let's pause, or let's stop it, and let's hit play again. Yeah, so now it's working fine. So the reason that error happened is because it was set to use pixels, and so 3.8, it was basically being spawned somewhere over here, like right in the top corner, because yeah, because we used pixels. So I changed it to grid, and now the jumping is working fine. And again, if you don't like, you can hit OK, and you can test it over here, and you can see the game a little bit better. All right, let's go back. So our game is getting there. The last thing we want to add are the two sounds. So let's go back into our ball object. Now you notice we're doing all of the coding inside of the ball object. That's because this is our first tutorial. I'm trying to keep it simple. As our games get more complex, all the various objects in your scene or in your game are going to have their own page of code. Um, all right, so we want to add some sound. So let's go to components, and let's do the clicking sound first. So I added a sound object, and it added it right here. So sometimes you gotta, it was easy to miss because it spawned right on top of this random object. But we'll put it over here, and let's click on the sound object, and you can see it allows you to choose a sound, whether it loops. And again, click on what's this, read about these about all these different components. So let's do choose sound. You can upload sounds, but I'm actually going to use some of the built-in ones. So let's go to built-in sounds, and this is a clicking sound. So they're broken up into categories. Again, go click on these different folders. You can preview them. If I turn the volume on, you can preview them right in here. And see, the clicks are kind of boring, but there's some other more interesting sounds. Explosions. Let's see, hear one of these. Whoa. So play around with it, listen to some different sounds. But I am going to go with a click sound. Where are we? Click. And I'll just go with the first click one. Press OK. So now we need something to play this sound effect, and we want it to play when you click on the object. So I'm going to draw another line going from mouse click to play this sound effect. Okay, so let's see if it's working. Again, this is kind of hard to see, but let's see it. So you see how the blocks light up yellow whenever you click on it. So this kind of a cool effect. It just shows you your code in action, and I think it'll help with finding errors later on. But let's hit pause, and let's add the other sound effect. So the other sound effect is when the ball hits the wall, it should bounce off. So when the ball hits the wall, right, that's an event, right? We want it to play a sound when something happens. So events are always under triggers, and the event we're looking for is a collision. So we're going to add a collision block, and for this game, we can let it, when the ball hits anything, we can play the sound, because this level only has one other thing besides the ball, and that's just the wall. So there's nothing else it could collide into. But in some games you might want to set it so that certain things happen only when you hit a certain category or a certain type of thing. So like, think about a platformer game. When you collect, like, a coin, right? When you hit a coin, you want it to do one thing, but when your character hits an enemy, you want it to do something else. But for now, we can leave the default, and let's throw in another sound object. It's over here, and let's set the sound. So effects, and so this is when you bounce off a wall. Let's go with, let's see, what would be a good category? Explosion, click, chime. I clicked on 8-bit, and maybe movement and jumping. So it's kind of like that's fine. It sounds like it's jumping off the wall, bouncing off the wall. So we'll press OK there. And now we just need to hook up our blocks. So when the ball objects hits anything, we're going to play this sound. At this point, our part 1 should be completed. So let's hit OK. And let's do play. you see it has the bouncing sound, and when you click, it switches position. So I'm gonna mute it. And this is the end of part 1. So stay tuned for part 2.